What's going on, my beautiful people? This is Certified Life and Relationship Coach, Coach Court. In today's video, we're going to talk about five signs that it's time to walk away from an avoidant. When you're in a relationship with an avoidant, it can feel like you're constantly reaching for someone who's just out of reach. And while relationships always take work, there comes a time when you have to assess whether staying in a relationship is healthy for you. And here are five signs it's time to walk away from an avoidant partner. But I'm going to take a pause to let the stream catch up. Let everyone who are coming in introduce themselves, say hello, wherever you're from. I hope you had a good Christmas. And I'm going to get into this real quickly here because I don't want to waste anyone's time. All right. But I got to let the analytics do what it's going to do. As you're coming in here, give me a like. Let me know where you're coming from, who you are, how long you've been following me. It's insane how many people have followed me for years, and I've only been doing this for about 5 years. So it's cool to see where everyone's coming from. And when people reach out to me, sometimes they're like, "I've been studying you for 3 years, and I'm just now starting to reach out and dive in deep into this attachment theory stuff." Miami, am I yayo? Healing avoidant women here. Okay, that's what's up. Been following you since this year. It's good to meet you. All right, I've done this topic before, and I always think it's a good thing to go back and revisit these things that I've coached before, because here's the thing: if you're not growing, if you're not constantly reassessing if what you're the way that you view things and the way that you see life is in alignment with where you're at in this current part of your journey, then I think that you're doing yourself a disservice, because a lot of people come to me about attachment style theory. They learn what they need to learn, and then they say, "All right, well, this doesn't serve me anymore. I'm going to move on. I've healed. Thank you for this leg and this marathon of life, but it's time for me to move on." So I also think that it's the same for me. I evolve. There's certain things that I believe in, and certain things that I've noticed that changes. Nothing stays the same. So I think it's important to go back and refresh. Like, for example, this year I was watching my typical movies that I watch around the holidays. I watch It's a Wonderful Life every year because I just like the life lessons, and it's just very exciting for me. And I'm not going to waste any more of your time, but every year I notice something different in a movie, and it's no different than your life, relationships, and even something like attachment style theory. Like, there are things that I believe worked 4 years ago, but they're no longer applicable. They don't work today. So this topic, when it's time to walk away from an avoidant, I go back and I reassess what do I feel to be the most accurate advice I can give you right now, December 27, 2024. And the first one is they refuse to communicate. So I see this really often. Um, they put the dismissive part in dismissive avoidant. So I'm not saying that if they do one of these things, it's time to walk away, because you can navigate things. You can actually resolve issues. There are avoidants who become more communicative over time when they learn to be more mindful about what they're doing, and when they start to care more about you and they feel like losing this relationship is valuable. This valuable relationship is something that they don't want to do. So this is in tandem with the other 4 or 5 things that I'm going to mention here. If you were really struggling with communication, and I said in one of my videos, for anxious attachers, communication is like breathing. It's almost like you're suffocated if you don't get to communicate what's on your mind or how you're feeling, or even addressing the issue that will be beneficial to address to help the relationship progress in a healthier manner. It's almost like you're being suffocated. Even sharing something about attachment style theory is tough, because once, let's say, an anxious attacher, I see this really, really heavy with fearful avoidance, because fearful avoidance for me tend to be the most spiritual and ones that dive deeply into personal development type content like this is when they dive deep. So they're I just lost my train of thought. So when they're trying to dive into things like attachment style theory, they want to share these things with the dismissive avoidant. And I get that pretty often too. How should I share this attachment style theory content with the avoidant? And most of the time, I say about 95% of the time, you don't, because if they're not ready to hear it, if they're not ready to have these conversations about attachment style theory, about their own childhood issues and what they consider as non-issues, then that's when you start to get this what John Gottman talk about Stonewall. He has this theory called the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and he says if these four things continue to happen consistently in a relationship, the relationship will end. And he's done a study with I think a bunch of married couples. The relationship would end with a 99% accuracy, and those things are stonewalling, uh, criticism, defensiveness, and contempt. Contempt being the worst. But if you have someone who's constantly stonewalling, they can't communicate, then a relationship, the air, the oxygen, like I said before, gets choked off and you can't progress. So that may be one of the bigger signs it's time to move on if they don't get to that point. So you have to ask yourself, are you the only one trying to resolve these issues? Or are they willing to grow like you're willing to grow? If not, then it's time that you should be letting this relationship go. A year. It's good to see you, Faith. I know this one found me right on time for sure. All love from Texas. Thank you for the realness you bring to the table. So I just, I'm up in Wisconsin. We drove 19 hours over this past Thanksgiving vacation down to Texas, and it was an experience. So it's good to see you from Texas. It was 19 hours each direction, which was, whew, it took some prayer on that one. All right, so number two is you feel like you're always chasing them. I got a plethora of videos on here that's titled Do Not Chase. Whenever I think about someone chasing, I think of like movies. I'm a movie buff. And you think of the difference between pursuing someone and chasing. If you think about the movies when someone's like on a pursuit trying to follow someone, it's a very light, just kind of follow behind them, just kind of be incognito to follow them where they're going, which means they know you're, but I know you're behind me, but it doesn't feel forceful and it doesn't feel intrusive. But when you start to chase, like when that person gets into a dead out sprint, then you're in a very dangerous zone here because I see this so often when someone gets, you know, ignored. Let's say that you're texting the person, if it's an avoidant, and then they ignore it. And you continue to follow up with further messages. I say, look, don't send more than two or three messages. Cut it completely off, and then just say, all right, I'm just going to let this. It's like a volleyball match. I'm going to hit it over, or ping pong, hit it over, let them hit it back over. Because if you continue to just bombard them with messages and bombard them with shots, then they'll start to feel like, all right, I'm in danger here. I'm in danger emotionally. I don't feel as if this person is right. I don't feel that they're centered. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I guess my headset cut off. I guess it didn't want to be on anymore. So someone just said, I never chase, but I'm always the first to initiate. And he responds, how about that? So that's another place you don't want to be in, where you're constantly the one that's sending out the messages. They respond like legit. An avoidant will respond most of the time, especially if you're in this limbo, not quite sure where you guys are standing. They will respond, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the interest is completely there. And this is when I say go no contact. Go no contact. Send out a message once every week, maybe, depending on where you guys are at in your stage of the relationship. If you guys are in a committed relationship, if you've been dating for years, or whatever it is, and you know their pattern and you know that they tend to back away during certain times. There's a lot of avoidance that will back away during the holiday season because they have some pent up or unresolved traumas with the holiday season and they don't really realize it. So don't keep sending out the messages. And this is the one where you really start to wonder if this is the right dynamic for you. I was looking at a quote the other day and it said, relationships aren't about compatibility, it's about adaptability. So are they adaptable to come to where you're at, to meet you in the middle, and to be able to be conscious enough to know that you are the one that's doing all the heavy lifting? So if you feel like you're chasing them, where you're always the one wanting to hang out, you're always the one to text them first, then I would say put a halt on this and consider, possibly cutting them off completely. Um, I had a lady that I was coaching, and she said, "Coach, I just want to be friends with him." And I say, "Okay, does this even sound like a good friendship? If you're the one that's constantly pouring into him and doing all of the lifting, what type of friendship is this? This is even a one-sided friendship." So really think about that one. The third one is they're unwilling to compromise. And that kind of goes on what I just said. Compromise, adaptability, or are they willing to meet you where you're at? So if you voice a concern with them, and this happens pretty often, you voice a concern with them and they make that temporary change. They make that change just enough to get you back comfortable and to give you some type of a hope that this may be a permanent change. But over time, those bad habits and the things that you complained about start to rear its ugly little head again. So you have to ask, is this going to be something that I can do more than two times? So if you voice a complaint and it's early on in a relationship or voice a concern, couple years into the couple months, let me think about what's a reasonable time to give someone to make the necessary changes to meet you where you're at or to fulfill your needs. Okay, I'm curious. What do you guys think is a good time frame for someone to make the changes that they need to change? Not like small changes, like if you moved in together and they're leaving a drawer open, how long would it take them to finally start closing that drawer or to start putting the toilet seat down? What do you think is a healthy time frame? Because this is a big change. If we're talking about communication, compromise, and meeting you in the middle, and what I have here is healthy relationships require give and take, but avoidance often resists compromise because they fear losing control or becoming too vulnerable. Without compromise, the relationship becomes one sided. If their avoidance is leaving you feeling unheard, it may be time to prioritize your well being. So, as just so I don't come off as a robot, I write that stuff just kind of keep me on task. But that's the questions you really should be asking yourself. Or do they even have it in them? So I see if you're in a relationship or you're dating someone that's more avoidant, dismissive avoidant to be specific, were they ever in relationships that lasted for a while and then they weren't able to, I guess, keep up with that tempo or the pace of that relationship, or they couldn't continue to do what needed to be done to keep that relationship healthy and thriving? If the answer is no, if if you hear that they've never had a serious long-term relationship, if there is someone who just gives up when times get rough, then that's probably the type of relationship where they won't be willing to compromise. I see this pretty often too. When you date someone that's older, let's say for the sake of just throwing out a number, over 40, the compromise, and they've lived alone, they never had kids, and they kind of just did their own thing. They've never been married. Then the idea of them having to share their space with someone, having you come in and rearrange things in their house. And I even said in one of my videos, this one avoidant broke up with someone because they didn't load the dishwasher the way that they loaded the dishwasher, which is another little weird, little nitpicky thing that someone that's an avoidant would do because they want to make sure that they're meeting someone that's connecting with them on every level, and that's just not possible. It's unrealistic. I had this I was in marriage counseling, and there was this handout that we got, and there was of two stick figure characters, and the husband was complaining in the counseling session that they were in, and he said, "Your unrealistic expectations are more unrealistic than my unrealistic expectations for you. Your unrealistic expectations of me are more unrealistic than my unrealistic expectations of you." And I didn't really take that in. That was about a decade ago. But now I look at like just how spot on some of these things that I was learning and taking in through schooling and through my own marriage has, how impactful that was if I would have been able to be there. So this is no different than the avoidant person that you're dating now, or if you've been in a relationship with, or that you're breaking up, that you gotten broken up with, or whatever the case is. Um, it's going to take a while for these things, because I think that people who are more anxious and more fearful avoidant, I'm not saying that it's like a blank, like it's like all across the board, but from what I've seen is the emotional intelligence is a little bit higher than someone who's a dismissive avoidant. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the times when they just kind of sleepwalk in life, and I think I talked about this on my last, um, being able to meet you where you're at is a little bit more difficult for them. Like I said, correct me if I'm wrong here. And the fourth one is you're losing yourself in the relationship. Another sign that it's time to leave the relationship. And if you're someone that's an anxious attacher, this is pretty common. This is basically the whole reason why the relationships don't work out, is because if you're anxious, preoccupied, you want to engulf your partner, you want to know everything about them, you want to do all of their hobbies with them. You want to just be who they need you to be. But that's the exact reason why you're going to form more resentment for them, and they're going to look at this relationship as if they're getting smothered and engulfed by you and doing too much. From San Antonio, new to following you. I was in San Antonio. It's good to meet you. And the last one here is they show no desire to change. Now, I believe I try to be optimistic. I try to be, you know, fluent in my thinking. And I try not to be so rigid. And hopefully you guys hopefully you guys are getting that from this channel. I try not to be rigid. So whenever you're entering into a relationship like this, it's encouraging for me to hear that, hey, they're willing to do therapy. They are willing to read a book like Attached, or one I recommend to a lot of my couples, which is Wired for Love. It's by Stan Tatkin. If they're willing to do things like that, it gives me hope that they do have this key piece that people need in relationships, which is adaptability. Because if they're willing to switch things up, and let's see, that's, for me, that's meeting you in the middle at least. But I have seen a lot of avoidance make that commitment to be adaptable, to make change, and then they pull back. It's almost like they have an expiration date for when they can continue to be uncomfortable doing things that doesn't align with what they truly want to do. So those are the five things I have for you. They refuse to communicate. You feel like you're always chasing them. They're unwilling to compromise. You're losing yourself in a relationship, and they. I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me? This thing went out again. And the last one is they show no desire to change. Right. So the whole reason I started this channel is because I wanted to make sure that people didn't confuse. I know it just keeps cutting off. It's not. It's like I'm not on these things all day long or something. Um, I made this channel to help you guys understand what the difference is between the different attachment styles, but also not to get the avoidance thrown in the bucket of narcissism. And like Paula said, so many of these videos that explain what they're going through or went through makes us feel sorry for them. But I believe that if you don't set the say in my other ones, if you feel like your mental health is being jeopardized, then you need to really reevaluate. And it may start as them needing someone that can come to come into their life to help them with counseling and therapy, to you being the one that needs the therapist. If you stay in this dynamic far too long, then it's expiration date. So it's a slow ride to build trust. And I think that's the healthy part of it. You shouldn't just blindly give someone your trust right away, because that's when a lot of a lot of scars are formed when you put yourself in that type of situation. So I think it is good to take things slowly to understand who the person is. I watch a lot of these shows, I watch like 90 Day Fiance, and I see how they like jump into these relationships into getting married, engaged right away. And I'm like, this will make for good content, but it won't make for a good relationship, because it takes time for these things to work, for you to understand who they are. My theory is it takes 8 seasons. You need to experience 2 summers, 2 springs, 2 winters, 2 falls with someone to know how they're going to truly show up in those seasons. And if you're with an avoidant, they may be more depressed during the springtime or during the wintertime. So thank you guys for sticking around with me this Friday night. Appreciate you. And if you found this video of any value, please like, comment, and share. You can reach out to me on my other social media accounts. Instagram is I am Coach Court. Facebook is Coach Court. YouTube is Coach Court. And always remember, when you go be loved, you'll never have to find it. Namaste.